But I want to welcome to the show Chiefs Insider Steve Willis. What's up, Steve?
Hey, what's going on? Glad to be here and really glad for a great Super Bowl matchup.
Definitely, Steve. So let's get right to it, Steve. Let's talk about the AFC Championship game. The Chiefs beat the Bengals Sunday evening in Kansas City, 23-20. It's the fifth Super Bowl appearance in franchise history for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes punched his ticket to his third Super Bowl in 5 seasons as being the starter for the Chiefs. So what was your biggest takeaway for the Chiefs win over the Bengals Sunday night in the AFC Championship game, Steve?
Well, not to correct you too hard, but it's actually his third Super Bowl in 4 years. The only one that he missed was last year out of the last 4. But my takeaway from that game was the Kansas City Chiefs defense. That was my big takeaway. All right. One of the hallmarks of this Super Bowl that we're about to see is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles are the 2 best sacking teams in the NFL, number 1 and number 2, as far as sacks compiled. Now, the Chiefs have been able to get there with 4 rushers. And what that means is Steve Spagnuolo, who is very defense heavy, does not have to, or very blitz heavy, does not have to blitz very often with that defense. And that really helps out this young secondary, because outside of L'Jarius Sneed, this secondary is made up of virtually entirely rookies. And these guys aren't playing like rookies either. As you saw, Trent McDuffie, Cook, these guys are, they're just doing a veteran's job right now. And they're just doing amazing work. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, obviously, everybody saw towards the end of the game, Kansas City was running out of wide receivers. They're dropping like flies. We did get good news today. Coach Andy Reid did say today that all the players are doing great, with the exception of Mecole Hardman, who probably will not make the Super Bowl at this point. He is considered doubtful. But Kadarius Toney and Juju Smith-Schuster they both did the walkthrough today. They did not practice. They're given the knee and ankle respectively a rest. Willie Gay Jr. did say that his shoulder is doing well, so he's going to be in pretty good shape for the Super Bowl. And of course, Patrick Mahomes said he's doing just fine.
Now, Steve, I live here in Cincinnati, and obviously I watched the game with family and friends who are Bengal fans, and it was a lot of conversations about the officiating in the AFC Championship game. And honestly, I didn't like the officiating either. I didn't like the intentional grounding penalty on Joe Burrow. I did see Sam Pirine in the vicinity. That last penalty that was called on the side, that late hit on Mahomes, was the correct penalty. But I didn't like that penalty, the one with the intentional grounding on Burrow. And then earlier, I didn't like the replay on 3rd down as well. They ran the play. The Bengals had stopped the Chiefs, and then they ran another 3rd down play. And I said earlier on the show, hell, it's hard to stop Patrick Mahomes on 3 downs enough. Like, that's hard within itself. You give him another chance, but they didn't score on that possession. So a lot of Bengal fans, they are upset about the officiating in the AFC Championship game. What was your thoughts on the officiating in the game?
Well, I mean, let's be perfectly honest. A fan's judgment of the officiating also depends on the outcome. Of course, the losing team is going to be more critical of the officiating than the winning team. But even the Kansas City fans believe that the officiating was mediocre, but not great. I will say on the 3rd down do-over, that controversial 3rd down do-over play, all right, the NFL got it right. But here's the thing that a lot of people aren't thinking about. All right, because it didn't happen this way, what would have happened if that official that was running in from the secondary, waving off the play and blowing his whistle, what if whoever was covering Marquez Valdez-Scantling at the time gave up on the play because he thought the play was over, and Scantling goes for a 65-yard touchdown through the air from Patrick Mahomes because he's in busted coverage.
Yeah.
I guaranteed the Cincinnati fans at that point would be screaming about, hey, wait a second, half our defense stop playing.
Absolutely.
So at that point, you have no choice but to stop the play, reset, start it over. If you even think one player heard a whistle and stopped, you've given the other team an unfair advantage. So really, stopping the play is the prudent thing to do. Now, mind you, the very next play, Mahomes got sacked. And if it weren't for a defensive holding penalty in the backfield, they would have been off the field. So It still came down to the Bengals defense. And as far as the hit out of bounds to Patrick Mahomes, I mean, look, it's the rule. Even Osai said afterwards, it was on him.
Yeah.
He lost track of where he was. He was in pursuit mode, and he put his hands on Patrick Mahomes and shoved him.
Yeah.
And there's the reason why those penalties are there. What if he would have hurt Patrick Mahomes? We would be going into this Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts versus Chad Henne.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's why these penalties are in place. It sucks that it was the deciding penalty to move them into field goal position, but at the same time, hey, look, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow threw 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
He goes down and scores anything on either of those, and one of them was definitely looked like a scoring drive, but he does anything on either of those, and we're not even talking about this.
That's why I was going next. Not to cut you off. That's why I was going next.
Sure.
The Bengals didn't lose this game because of bad officiating. The Bengals lost this game because Mahomes outplayed Burrow, because Patrick Mahomes, no Juju Smith-Schuster, no Kadarius Toney, no Mecole Hardman, and Joe Burrow had Jamar Chase. He had T. Higgins. He had Hayden Hurst. Okay, so like I said, it's my family, it's my friends. So I'm there talking to him. I'm explaining, hey, yes, it was some bad officiating calls, but the reason why the Bengals lost the game was because Mahomes outplayed Burrow finally. Because in their first 3 matchups, Burrow did outplay Mahomes, but on Sunday, Mahomes outplayed Joe Burrow, and that was the difference in the game.
It really was. And something to think about, too. The Chiefs actually had more points on the board. There were two touchdowns, one touchdown and 1 interception that were taken away due to penalties. Yeah. So the Chiefs had gripes on penalties, too.
Yeah.
Honestly, every flag that I saw thrown was legit. Were there a few missed calls? Yeah. John Madden one time said there's holding on every play.
Yeah.
Look, it's whether you get caught or not. That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs won. They now have the monkey of not beating the Bengals off of their back, and they're ready to go into what I think is going to be one of the best Super Bowls we've seen in a long time.
Now, defensively, Steve, I thought that Chris Jones was the best defensive player on the field. He only had 3 tackles, but he had 2 very, very important sacks in this game, and he was my most impactful player for the Chiefs going into this game, for them to have a chance to win the game. Can you talk about Chris Jones' performance in the AFC Championship game real quick?
Well, Chris Jones is an absolute game wrecker, and I don't need to tell you that. Everybody knows that. But his performance in this game it went well beyond the stat sheet. If you go back and look at the All-22, which I have a few times, Chris Jones takes up a double team 100% of the time. That frees up guys like Colin Saunders, Mike Dana, and even Frank Clark and Carlos Dunlap to take one-on-ones. And when you give any of those 4 guys opportunities for one-on-ones against any offensive lineman, they can win. And Chris Jones fighting off the double teams to still get 3 tackles, still get 2 sacks, finally getting that playoff sack that he's been waiting for. it just speaks to how dynamic of a player he is. And he can line up in any position, right over the center. He can line up on the end. He can line up out wide. He can stop the run, and he can definitely sack the quarterback, as we saw last Sunday.
Yeah, one more question for you, Steve, before you get out of here. I'm going to definitely bring you back on again next week before the Super Bowl. But talk about the motivating factors for the Chiefs going into this game. I mean, we heard the Bengals players after their win against the Bills, they were talking about we're going to Burrowhead, and it was trash talk all week long. And then in the immediate aftermath of the AFC Championship, you hear Mahomes having his interview with Tracy Wolfson, and then Kelsey comes over and he says Burrowhead my ass, like Burrowhead my ass, like what? And I kind of thought, watching and listening to them in the post-game press conference, Steve, I got the sense that the Chiefs were motivated, given the fact that they had lost the last 3 matchups to the Bengals, and the fact that the Bengals last year in this exact round sent the Chiefs home. I thought the Chiefs were motivated in this game. To that you say what?
Well, first of all of these players, they say the right things in the press conference. They always say, well, we don't listen to that stuff. We don't listen to that stuff. They hear every word of it. They hear absolutely every word. And as far as this game goes, Chris Jones was talking about this game in OTAs this year, talking about how this game last year left a sour taste in his mouth. He left 2 sacks on the field. He couldn't get to Joe Burrow. He was hoping against anything that they would be able to play the Bengals again, and sure enough, they did. So this game had plenty of motivating factors for the Kansas City Chiefs. The fact that they had never beaten Joe Burrow and the Bengals, the fact that the Chiefs are trying to get back to another Super Bowl, the fact that they were actually looked at as being the underdog in this game, with 78% of the country picking the Bengals. They, obviously the Burrowhead comments and, the disrespect that the Bengals were presuming that everybody was putting on them, they were kind of deflecting that onto the Chiefs, and the Chiefs were absorbing it. Yeah. And as Carlos Dunlap said after the game, we do our talking on the field. And so there we go. I think the funniest part was when Frank Clark on the field had a cigar, and Neil Smith, the Hall of Famer, former Chiefs defensive tackle, lit it for him. And they celebrated. Yeah. I love that. He's Steve Willis, the Chiefs insider. Hey, Steve, let everyone know where they can follow you on social media. Well, you can find me absolutely anywhere on social media: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, at Social Media Steve. I also have a new podcast coming out here very shortly called the East of Arrowhead Podcast. It's going to be an AFC West focused podcast, mostly Kansas City Chiefs. I will be covering other things. Obviously, we have big news in Denver with Sean Payton, and what the Raiders are going to do for a quarterback with Mr. Carr looking like he's on his way out the door, and of course, how the new offensive coordinator is going to shape up in Los Angeles for the Chargers. We're gonna cover all kinds of stuff, but that's gonna be coming soon to everywhere you hear podcasts.
Real quick, Steve, before you go, let's make this real quick. Before you Mahomes, real quick, I gotta get this question out. Obviously, this year he had 41 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, over 5,000 passing yards. More than likely, he's going to win the NFL MVP. He made his 3rd Super Bowl in 4 seasons. And he's been in the AFC Championship game every year he started. They might as well rename the AFC Championship game the Patrick Mahomes Invitational. Talk about how he was able to will his team in this game, considering he didn't have a Mecole Hardman, a Kadarius Toney, or a Juju Smith-Schuster.
Well, a lot of it is belief. And that's the one thing you're going to hear around the Chiefs facility is believe. They believe in Patrick Mahomes. They believe in Andy Reid. They believe in that system, and they believe in each other. When you come into the Kansas City Chiefs locker room, nobody looks at somebody else and points fingers. They all believe that it is on them to be a part of something greater. And even with the personalities they bring in, they check their ego at the door. Yeah. And that's what's really the most important. Every one of these players, they do what's best for the overall of the team. And if that means watching a little extra tape, doing, a little more in the walkthrough, whatever it takes, that's what they do. And I have one thing to add. Obviously, Tom Brady has announced his retirement. One incredible player, probably, the most accomplished quarterback we're ever going to see in our lives. And there's a great debate now about if he's going to be the greatest of all time. And obviously with Patrick Mahomes doing what he's doing now, they're starting to compare him to Tom Brady. Yeah. And people are arguing back and forth. I heard this the other day, and I want to share this with you and all of your listeners. And this was phenomenal. This is a great comparison. If you put this in an NBA sense, Tom Brady, it would be Bill Russell. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes would be Michael Jordan. Bill Russell was the most accomplished NBA player ever. 11 championships. Nobody's ever going to get that many championships. But Michael Jordan, easily the most talented NBA player to ever grace the court. And I feel like that comparison was perfect. Tom Brady, all of his rings, you'll never see that again. He's definitely Bill Russell. Patrick Mahomes, Michael Jordan.
Yes, and I agree. There's no quarterback in their first 5 seasons as a starter has been able to do what Patrick Mahomes has done. So I agree with you, man. The path that he's on a path to be arguably the greatest of all time. And he's definitely more talented than Brady ever was. He may not get 7 Super Bowls, but he's more talented than Tom Brady ever was as a quarterback. Steve, I appreciate you joining me tonight on Wise Guys Sports. I'm going to bring you on again next week, and we're going to preview the Super Bowl matchup.
Absolutely. Be glad to do it.
Thanks, Steve, man. Enjoy your night.
Thank you.